In 1817, a strange young woman appeared in the town of Almondsbury in England. She claimed to come from a faraway island, and it was soon believed that she was a princess. For several months she received the highest level of hospitality, being treated like a foreign dignitary, but soon many people began to question her story. This is the tale of Princess Caraboo and her elaborate hoax. On the 3rd of April 1817, a most peculiar series of events began in the small town of Almondsbury, to the northeast of the port city of Bristol in southwestern England. That day a young woman, perhaps in her mid-20s, wearing a black turban and other strange foreign garments, entered the town and began speaking an unknown language to the town's residents. She seemed confused and lost. Within a short period of time, the young woman came into contact with a local cobbler, who quickly took her to Mr. Hill's house. Mr. Hill was overseer of the poor, and he was known for hauling vagrants before court, but on this occasion, he didn't know what to make of this strange-looking woman, so he decided the best course of action was to send her off to his superior, the town clerk. Following this, the young woman soon gained the sympathy of Mrs. Elizabeth Worrell, a woman from America originally, who had settled in England. Elizabeth was the wife of the town clerk of Bristol, and an important figure in the locality. She took the young woman under her wing and into her home. There she began trying to acquire information as to who she might be and the mysteries that surrounded her. For instance, she showed her pictures from books of exotic places. The young woman became excited when shown a drawing of China. Perhaps she was from Asia, Mrs. Worrell wondered. In the end, the young woman was offered a bed at the Bowl Inn in Almondsbury for the night. There she was shown a picture of a pineapple, to which she pointed and said ananas, a French word for pineapple today, but one which has its origins amongst the Tupi people of Brazil, though other sources claim she said nanas, which is the Indonesian word for pineapple. In any case, to her use of the word, Mrs. Worrell's husband Samuel, a noted drunkard in the region despite his prominent position as the town clerk of Bristol, responded that the young woman should be sent to Bristol and tried for vagrancy and begging. As a result of Mr. Worrell's proposal, the young woman was briefly imprisoned. It was during her detention that a Portuguese mariner by the name of Manuel Enos, who had travelled extensively around the world, claimed he could understand the language which she was speaking. This Enos was a complete charlatan himself, and went on to tell the people of Almondsbury that the young woman had told him that she came from an island called Javasu, and had been kidnapped by pirates. She had eventually managed to escape by jumping overboard, and when she had swum to shore, she found herself near the town. In addition, he revealed that the young woman was a princess named Caraboo, who had previously lived a life of luxury, surrounded by beautiful gardens and servants to wait on her every move. For the next several months, Princess Caraboo became a celebrity in Almondsbury, and then the wider Gloucestershire area as news of her unusual story spread. She was treated very well by the English, being compared to a foreign dignitary. The princess was well fed, clothed, given comfortable accommodation, had her portrait taken, and the nearby city of Bath even threw a ball for her. In return, she performed an exotic war dance said to be common amongst her people. Sometimes she would provide examples of the alleged written language of the people of Javasu, and even generated great interest by cooking a chicken curry from her native land. The princess was also noted to have some odd habits, only eating vegetables and drinking tea, and one author from the time wrote that she fenced and used a homemade bow and arrow with great skill, danced exotically, swam naked in the lake when she was alone, and prayed to her supreme being, Allah Ta'ala, from treetops. Despite all this, some still weren't convinced, and hoped tricking her would reveal the truth. On one occasion, a series of banknotes were thrown on the table in front of her, and some fell on the floor. They hoped Caraboo would glance to see how much the notes were worth and show some kind of interest, but she didn't. She was indifferent, and it seemed like she just saw the notes as worthless pieces of paper. Another time, a handsome young gentleman used flattery, sitting down close to her and saying, "I think that you're the loveliest creature I ever set eyes on." She showed no reaction. It wasn't long until Princess Caraboo's story was given the scholarly seal of approval. A few weeks after her arrival in the town, one Dr. Wilkinson, a scholar and polymath from the town of Bath, arrived to verify her story. Wilkinson noticed that the princess had scars on the back of her head, which he concluded must have been produced by some sort of native ritual, while he also showed her a manual of world languages, through which he determined that she was actually speaking Rajang, and was actually from the island of Sumatra in what is now Indonesia, but which was then part of the Dutch East Indies, a colony which was spread across many islands of Southeast Asia, which the Dutch had begun to conquer from the early 17th century. Thus, the people of Almondsbury now knew where their princess had allegedly come from. Dr. Wilkinson's appearance might have seemed like it had substantiated the young woman's story, but in reality, it quickly led to the uncovering of her elaborate deception. On his visit to the town, and after his questioning of the young woman, Dr. Wilkinson was asked by Samuel Worrell to publish his findings in the national newspapers, along with a public notice that any further information concerning the young woman would be welcome. A sketch drawing of the young woman was included to help people identify her. This was her undoing, for within weeks, Dr. Wilkinson was back in Almondsbury to alert the townsfolk that he'd received information from several sources that the woman was actually English, and that she was making up the entire story. This came from individuals who had known her in times gone by, notably a Mrs. Neal, who had provided her with lodgings not long before. In the days that followed, it was determined that the language she had been speaking was a gibberish tongue, consisting of random elements of French, Spanish and made-up words, while the peculiar marks on Mary's head were actually scars from an operation she had undergone in a poorhouse hospital. Enes, the Portuguese sailor who had claimed to be able to communicate with her, had also made up what he had said for his own reasons. Thus, in the late summer of 1817, the fraud of Princess Caraboo was revealed. This of course raises the question as to just exactly who Princess Caraboo really was. The truth became apparent within a few weeks of the discovery of her deception. The princess was in fact a woman called Mary Wilcox, who had most likely been born in Witherich in Devonshire in 1791. Church records reveal that she was baptised in the church there in November of that year. She had suffered from rheumatic fever as a child, and her father subsequently stated that she had been psychologically unstable thereafter, or quote, never quite right in the head, as he put it. The paper soon caught wind of the hoax, with an Exeter newspaper publishing, "The wonderful female who has outwitted the doctor, puzzled the learned, and astonished the multitude, turns out to be a vile impostor, a vagrant wanderer, and daughter of a poor cottager." As she got older, Mary had moved to London and ended up working as a nursemaid in Clapham for the children of a wealthy family. There she developed a liking for telling the children fantastical tales, and it seems to have been during this period that her decision to begin concocting an elaborate story about herself emerged. However, she also fell upon hard times. One account states that she married a foreign gentleman who she accompanied to Dover, where he disappeared and never showed up again. She then spent a period of time in a workhouse in the capital, and also had a child who died in infancy. Thereafter she had become an itinerant, leaving London and travelling with some gypsies. After a period spent begging on the streets of Bristol, she drifted towards Almondsbury, and it was then that she began pretending to be Princess Caraboo. Following the exposure of her ruse, Mary elected to leave England altogether, taking passage for the United States, which was paid for by Mrs. Worrell. A story was subsequently ran in September 1817 in the Bristol Journal that her ship had been blown off course while heading across the Atlantic Ocean, and that she had ended up adrift and landing on the island of St. Helena, where she had allegedly met the former Emperor of France and ruler of much of Europe, Napoleon Bonaparte, who was in enforced exile there after his final defeat at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. The story goes on to tell how the former emperor fell for her charms and quickly proposed to her, but Mary turned down his offer and continued on her journey to America. This was obviously made up, as St. Helena lies in the South Atlantic, thousands of kilometers away from the route Mary's ship would have taken to America. Having reached the United States, Mary settled in the city of Philadelphia. There she found that she was already famous as Princess Caraboo and was persuaded by a local showman, Mr. Sanders, to begin appearing on stage at the Washington Hall to perform as the mythical royal woman from Southeast Asia. She did this for a time, engaging in an amateur dance act and speaking her obscure language. However, the show was not a major success, and as audience numbers dwindled, Sanders decided to cancel it. She spent several years in America nonetheless, becoming increasingly disillusioned with the nature of celebrity. Mary eventually decided to leave the United States in 1824. She returned to England and took up residence in London. There she tried to continue her fantastical claims by exhibiting herself as Princess Caraboo at a theatre in New Bond Street, but by that time she was too well known for the charade to fool anyone. A final effort at taking the show to France and Spain was short-lived, and she was back in Britain by 1828, where she married Richard Baker. In order to distance herself from her earlier time as Princess Caraboo, she registered her maiden name as Burgess, the surname of a cousin, at the time of her wedding. Mary's subsequent life was unremarkable. She and Richard had one daughter together named Mary after her mother, who was born in 1829. She spent the next 3 decades of her life as a mother and wife, working on the side by supplying leeches to the infirmary hospital in Bristol at a time when these parasitic worms were still used for their alleged therapeutic benefits. Over time, she became profoundly embarrassed about her past and would flee when local children chanted "Caraboo" at her. Mary died in Bedminster, south of Bristol on Christmas Eve 1864, aged 72 according to her alleged date of birth, though other sources claim she was 75. She was buried in an unmarked grave in a cemetery on Hebron Road. Her and Richard's daughter carried on the leech business thereafter, and lived alone as a spinster until her own death in 1900, when the family home burned down. Owing to how peculiar her story was, Princess Caraboo was featured widely in popular culture since her own time. Plays were produced on her deception during the mid-19th century, and her story remained a popular example of European ignorance of certain parts of the world for much of the Victorian era. There has been a revitalization in recent decades, with the 1994 film entitled Princess Caraboo, starring Phoebe Cates, recounting the events which took place in Almondsbury in 1817. A historical novel has also been published based on her story, while the last decade has seen Princess Caraboo return to the London stage, as musicals and a play have been written and performed on her story. Thus, the tale of Princess Caraboo continues to intrigue 2 centuries after her elaborate deception. Thank you everyone so much for watching this video on Princess Caraboo. I hope you found it interesting. If you want more stories on imposters, deception, and royal fakers, please let me know down in the comments. If you want to know the equipment that I use in my video, you can check out the links to my Amazon store in the description. And I hope you guys are subscribed and have notifications turned on to get all my videos as soon as I upload them. Anyway, that's all from me, so I'll see all of you in the next Forgotten Life. Thanks.